Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Monday, it's the 3rd of March, and today is day 514. Friends, as the week begins, the news about where the ceasefire stands or where it doesn't stand is just horrific. Netanyahu announced over the weekend the cutting off of food, water, humanitarian assistance, essentially the closure of Gaza once again, completely. And the name of that plan is being called the Hell Plan because Katz, the Minister of Defense, said that the gates of Gaza will be locked and the gates of hell will be opened. This is all in order to put pressure on Hamas to accept the recent ceasefire agreement that was proposed by the special envoy to the Middle East for the Trump administration, where Hamas said no. The Guardian reports that Israel may also cut off electricity to try to secure more hostage releases, and both sides are once again preparing for war to begin again. The Israeli government is reportedly planning to ratchet up its blockade. This is again a part of the Hell Plan in order to attempt to achieve the release of more hostages without any troops withdrawing further from the Palestinian territory of Gaza. So the ceasefire has lasted for about 6 weeks. It's in limbo. It's not completely ended, but it has not been extended. There's been no sign of movement toward a second phase that was due to start last weekend. We spoke about this previously. Negotiations were supposed to start several weeks ago. They did not. There was one day where we heard that negotiations had begun, and then Steve Witkoff presented the alternative Trump plan, where half of the hostages would be released on day one, and Hamas said no. Both sides are taking contingency steps to return to a war footing. Netanyahu reportedly made preparations to go beyond just the suspension of food and fuel that he announced yesterday and to implement a program of steadily increased isolation of Gaza. Hamas accused Israel of trying to collapse the Gaza ceasefire agreement, with an official saying that Netanyahu's attempt to extend the first phase of the deal was a blatant attempt to avoid entering into negotiations as a part of the second phase, which envisioned an Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. You'll recall that there are very specific aspects of that. You know, the Netzarim corridor in the center, the Israeli military did withdraw from the Philadelphia corridor, which is on the border with Egypt. The Israeli military is still present there, for example. Benjamin Netanyahu's office yesterday said it's imposing a blockade on Gaza because Hamas would not accept a plan which it claimed had been put forward by the U.S. Special Envoy Witkoff. Now, you need to understand there always has been a blockade on Gaza for the last 17 years. It's just that sometimes restrictions have been lifted or not. So the idea that a new blockade is being imposed just means a complete blockade, not a new blockade. Egypt and Qatar, both mediators in the conflict, were among the Arab states that said Israel's decision is a violation of a ceasefire deal. The Egyptian Foreign Ministry accused Israel of using starvation as a weapon against the Palestinian people. Israel has also been accused of violating international law. The Turkish foreign minister has said that the decision to block aid aims to collectively punish the Palestinian people of Gaza. And again, cutting off of food, humanitarian assistance, water, this is fundamentally illegal by international law. Foreign ministers from several Arab countries have met behind closed doors in Cairo. This is ahead of the Arab League summit. That begins tomorrow, Tuesday. It will focus on alternatives to Donald Trump's proposal for the effective ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from the Gaza Strip. And Reuters has seen a copy of the plan that came out of Egypt that is presented as an alternative to Trump's takeover proposal. The Egyptian plan would reportedly sideline Hamas, which would then be replaced by interim bodies controlled by Arab, Muslim, and Western states. I have a few other summaries about the Israel-Hamas war and the U.S. response. Most of these come from Just Security. The first is that a number of Arab countries, the United Nations, and humanitarian organizations have criticized Israel's decision to withhold aid from Gaza. The mediators, Egypt and Qatar, accusing Israel of violating humanitarian law by using starvation as a weapon. Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, called for humanitarian aid to be allowed to flow back into Gaza immediately. This was a sentiment echoed by a number of humanitarian organizations such as Doctors Without Borders, the International Committee of the Red Cross, and Oxfam. Israeli officials said yesterday, again, that humanitarian assistance would not be allowed in. Hamas had previously rejected this plan to potentially extend phase one of the ceasefire with further exchange for hostages and Palestinian detainees. And part of the reason why, this is from CNN and AP News, is that Hamas is saying negotiations have to continue based on what was already agreed upon. The withdrawal of remaining Israeli forces from Gaza, a permanent end to the conflict in accordance with the intended second phase of the deal. U.S. Secretary of State Rubio has invoked emergency authorities in a statement he put out on Saturday, announcing $4 billion in U.S. military assistance to Israel, the Trump administration's second such delivery. This bypasses congressional approval of arms exports. Former Secretary of State Blinken did not authorize the State Department to act on a recommendation to stop funding to several Israeli military units over the reported abuse of Palestinian detainees issued in the final months of the Biden administration. This was under the Leahy Law. So the Leahy Law says that if there are particular units that violate U.S. law, those units should not be allowed to use U.S. weapons. And the State Department found that I think it was 5 different units in the Israeli military were in violation and that it was not applied. In Syria, Damascus is seeking a trade to trade a sovereign debt relief agreement, return of assets, and an injection of reconstruction funds in exchange for allowing Russia to keep its Hamamim and Tartus bases in Syria, according to Syrian, Russian, and diplomatic sources. So they're looking for a return of assets, injection of reconstruction funds, and sovereign debt relief. So Damascus is seeking to trade those things in exchange for allowing Russia to keep those 2 bases in Syria. Israel is lobbying the U.S. to keep Syria decentralized and weak, including by letting Russia keep its bases in Syria. This would counter the influence of Turkey and Turkey's growing influence in the region. The extent to which the Trump administration is partial to Israel's proposals is not clear, but that is what is trying to be accomplished by the Netanyahu government. Israel's Netanyahu on Saturday said he'd instructed the Israeli military to deliver a strong message that if Syria's new government harms the Druze, it will be harmed by Israel. This was following a clash that happened on Friday night between Damascus security forces and the Druze community. Syrian Druze and government leaders rejected Netanyahu's comments. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, 1 person was killed and 9 others were wounded in a clash. So there's a bit of a debate. There's these contentious territories. Of course, in the Golan Heights, Israel has annexed the Golan. President Trump, during his first administration, acknowledged the annexation. Many countries around the world consider the Golan to be occupied territories. And then there are other territories that are in Syria that Israel has either been present in or has had operations in the past weeks. The Kurdistan Workers' Party PKK militia on Saturday declared a ceasefire with Turkey. This is quite significant, following the jailed PKK leader's call for the militia to lay down their arms. This happened last week. 1 person, this was in Turkey specifically, 1 person was killed and 4 others injured in a stabbing attack in the northern Israeli city of Haifa. Police have indicated, they added that they're treating the incident as a militant attack, but no one has claimed responsibility. And then I wanted to give you an update about the Qassia family. Many of you have heard of this family. It's a Christian family that lives outside of Beit Jala. The Qassia family lives in an area called Al-Makhror, which is near Beit Jala. We've talked about this family before. Their property had been taken over by settlers, and they've not had access to it over the past several months. If not, it might be a longer period of time than that. The Casilla family just issued a report recently, and its summary essentially states that the company that claims to have bought the family land in 1969 doesn't exist, and that there are no civil registry records of it in Israel. So this was a win for the family in the Israeli court system. However, even though they won in the Israeli courts, they still they say that they have gotten the settlers off of their land, but they still don't have access to their land. So this case is ongoing. The pending records of the civil administration of, quote, Judea and Samaria are who are keeping record of it. Judea and Samaria, there has been a significant push to not call the West Bank, the occupied West Bank, which is a part of the occupied Palestinian territories, to call it Judea and Samaria. And so the records are from the civil administration of Judea and Samaria. And the Casilla family published a multiple page document. I mean, I think it's 80 pages or so, that has all kinds of legal documents pertaining to Jordanian law that forbids the sale of the West Bank and Palestinian lands to non-Arabs. I wanted to close with something that one of our staff members, Destiny Magnet, who is our manager of outreach and engagement or church engagement, she shared with me a book that I'm eager to read myself, but she leads often or almost every week our Wednesday prayer time. And, we were talking about how hard we're working and how much we're doing emails. And sometimes it just feels like, is our work making any difference? And a few days ago, she shared with me these words from the Liturgy of the Ordinary that's published by InterVarsity Press. The author is Reverend Tish Harrison Warren. And I wanted to share them with you just as a closing word of encouragement. So again, this is from the Liturgy of the Ordinary by Reverend Tish Harrison Warren. It's hard for me to believe that checking email could be a place of prayer. I want God to call me to other things that feel more important, meaningful, and thrilling. But this work, in this hour, is a living prayer that I may go in peace to love and serve the Lord. That doesn't mean I have to be giddy about checking email. I'm not sure I ever will be. But I want to remember that we were made for a day when God's chosen people will, quote, long enjoy the work of their hands, end quote. Isaiah 65, verse 22. We are blessed and sent to work in this world where we face fallenness and toil, but even still, our labor is not in vain. And one day, all of it, even our smallest daily tasks, even email, will be sifted and shorted and redeemed. So may that be so. May the work of our hands, may the labor that we have before us, whatever it may be, may it be honoring to God, may it be redeemed, and may it be a way that our hands can honor God. May our labor not be in vain. In the name of Christ, amen.